would you reverse the cut in corporation tax?
But I'm telling you, Andrew, that our priority is
You're not telling me the question.
I am. I'm
answer.
saying that the cuts in corporation tax, the cuts in inheritance tax, the cuts in capital gains tax.
But where was the...
I think that the cuts on corporation tax are missing a point because we need that money. We need
so
that money
you
at the moment.
would you reverse it?
Hold on. Inheritance tax.
Would you reverse them?
I think that at the moment, cutting at a time where we need those services and people need those services is the wrong decision to make.
Did Piers Morgan just expose Labour's biggest lie? In a shocking confrontation with Angela Rayner, Morgan laid bare the party's hollow housing promises.
Because you've interrupted me and I want to make this point, it's really serious to people in this country, that you've told people we've got to live within our means, we've got to have this austerity to absolutely the richest in the country. At the same time, where they've told the poorest people in this country over the past, it is true, at the same time that you've told the people in this country over the last 6 years, we've got to cut our coffee. No, let me finish this point.
As Rayner stammered through her responses, it became clear that Labour's pledge to build 1.5 million homes was nothing more than a pipe dream. But that's not all. Wait until you hear about the bet Morgan proposed that left Rayner squirming. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
This is what Jeremy was talking about in Prime Minister's question today. You've given away money that actually, quite frankly, we need to spend. And it's not just about an ageing population. That is phony. People know about the ageing population.
Can I bring you back to my question? What would Labour do?
Well, we've already talked about, I mean, some of the taxation decisions that the government have made around inheritance tax, capital gains tax, corporation tax, where you've given away money for some time. We've cut the criteria so people can't get community care. We treat our older people at the moment like dogs. It's a disgrace. We shouldn't do that.
But, excuse
we should
me,
be investing and putting the money in the primary care
Would you
services.
reverse the cuts on corporation tax?
Piers Morgan's recent confrontation with Angela Rayner over Labour's ambitious housing pledge has left many questioning the party's credibility. Labour's promise to build 1.5 million homes in their first term seemed impressive at first glance. But Morgan's relentless questioning quickly exposed the cracks in this grand plan. As the interview unfolded, it became clear that Rayner was struggling to provide concrete details.
No, they raised the capital gains tax in the coalition government.
Well, what I'm saying, Andrew... And
what you're saying is wrong. They raised the capital gains tax to 28%.
What I'm saying is that they've given tax cuts.
What's the cut in capital gains tax?
But what's really important, Andrew...
No, excuse me, I'm asking you a question. What's the cut in the capital gains tax?
They've cut the capital gains tax. They did that. They did that as part of the coalition government.
On how Labour would actually implement this massive project. Morgan, known for his no-nonsense approach, pressed her on the specifics. How many homes would be built each year? Where would the funding come from? What about the logistical challenges of such a large-scale endeavour? Rayner's responses were vague and unconvincing. She fumbled through explanations about working with local councils and innovative financing solutions, but failed to offer any substantial information. It was painfully obvious that Labour hadn't thought through the practical realities of their promise. As Rayner struggled, Morgan upped the ante. In a bold move, he proposed a bet. If Labour fails to deliver on this promise, will you resign? He challenged. The atmosphere in the studio became tense as Rayner visibly squirmed under the pressure. Her reluctance to accept the bet spoke volumes about Labour's confidence in their own pledge.
What would the capital gains tax be under a Labour government and how much would that raise compared to now?
But I've told you, Andrew, what our priority is. It's about how we invest in our public services.
No, you're just off now.
No, I'm
let
not
me bring
just
you
off,
back
Andrew,
to let me bring you back to the question. Look, you think there may be an election coming up. So you need to get your policies right. No, I'm asking you how you would raise the money. Now, how much money would you recoup?
Excuse me,
it's important you answer the questions because you want people's votes.
This exchange highlighted a broader issue plaguing Labour, the gap between their lofty promises and their ability to deliver. The housing pledge, meant to address a critical issue for many voters, now appears to be little more than political posturing. Morgan's confrontation with Rayner didn't just expose the flaws in Labour's housing plan, it raised serious questions about the party's overall credibility. How can voters trust a party that makes such grand promises without a solid plan to back them up? As we delve deeper into the public's reaction to this interview, it's clear that Labour has some serious explaining to do. The growing frustration among voters is palpable, and the implications of this confrontation could be far-reaching for Labour's political future. Labour's grand housing pledge was meant to be their trump card. Instead, it's become their Achilles heel. As we peel back the layers of public outrage, we're forced to ask, is this the beginning of Labour's credibility crisis? The tension in the studio was palpable when an audience member decided to confront Angela Rayner directly. This wasn't just another political debate, it was a raw display of public frustration boiling over. The citizen accused Rayner of neglecting her duties, a sentiment that seems to be growing among voters who feel let down by Labour's empty promises. Rayner's responses during this confrontation were far from reassuring. Instead of addressing the concerns head-on, she danced around the issues with vague platitudes and political doublespeak. This only served to fuel the anger in the room. It's a microcosm of a larger problem Labour is facing, a widening gap between their lofty rhetoric and the harsh realities experienced by the public. The disconnect between Labour's housing promises and public perception is stark. While Rayner and her colleagues paint a picture of a party ready to solve the housing crisis, many citizens are sceptical. They've heard these promises before and they're tired of waiting for results that never seem to materialise. Adding fuel to the fire is the contentious issue of immigration's impact on housing allocation. Critics argue that Labour's policies seem to prioritise migrants over British citizens when it comes to housing. This perception, whether accurate or not, is eroding trust in the party's commitment to addressing the needs of their core constituents. Rayner's claim of plenty of housing during the confrontation raised eyebrows and contradicted earlier statements about the housing shortage. This inconsistency further undermines Labour's credibility on the issue. It's becoming increasingly difficult for voters to reconcile the party's contradictory messages. As the dust settles from this heated exchange, Labour's housing pledge appears more hollow than ever. What was once seen as a bold promise to tackle a critical issue now seems like little more than a political stunt. The lack of concrete plans and details has left many viewing it as an empty gesture rather than a viable solution to the housing crisis. The implications of this credibility crisis extend far beyond housing. If Labour can't deliver on this key promise, what does it mean for their other policies? Can voters trust them to follow through on any of their commitments? These are the questions that could haunt Labour in the coming months, potentially shaping their political future and electoral prospects. Piers Morgan's confrontation with Angela Rayner has laid bare the fundamental flaws in Labour's housing plan. What started as a bold promise to build 1.5 million homes has crumbled under scrutiny, exposing a lack of concrete planning and feasibility. This debacle highlights a growing chasm between political rhetoric and public trust. Voters are left wondering if any of Labour's pledges hold water. The aftermath of this interview paints a grim picture for Labour's credibility. Experts warn that without a solid plan to address the housing crisis, the party risks alienating voters in upcoming elections. The public's frustration is palpable, with concerns ranging from the impact of immigration on housing allocation to the perceived neglect of citizens' needs. As viewers, we must remain vigilant and critical of political promises. It's time to demand more than just catchy slogans and vague assurances. We need detailed plans, transparent funding strategies, and clear timelines. Only by holding our politicians accountable can we hope to bridge the widening gap between promises made and promises kept. The future of our housing market, and indeed our trust in the political system, depends on it.